him for that.
While we're going through other questions or shares, I wanted to, I didn't want to make this too long, but if you are willing and available to take somebody through the work that is on here, would you please post your name and number in the chat so that somebody who has not gone through the work or needs to go through the work again can grab your number or your name. And we just want to make that connection now because we realize some people don't have sponsors and some people don't have someone to take them through the work in this way that we've been going through the work. So while we're continuing, our questions and comments, so please put your name in the chat if you're available and willing. So any other questions?
I want to make a comment. At the end of the chapter, it says faith without works is dead. I've come up with a little thing that I love to say, and it's just based on my experience with this. Faith without works is dead, but works without faith is just self-propulsion. It's just managing well. So it goes back to that same thing we were talking about. I say faith, I say it like this. There's a couple ways you can say it. Faith is a modality of perception that gives reality to this great mystery. Faith is a modality of perception that gives reality to this great mystery. Now, if you take it the way it says it, we agnostics, it says faith is a modality of perception that gives reality to this bondage of self. It's whatever I put it in. If I'm worshiping the God of reason and I'm mind bound and I'm listening and that's the only paradigm I live in, then it's a very limited paradigm. It's full of mental anxiety. It's full of fears. It's full of stories. It's full of projections. It's full of you did it to me. Very very centered on self perceptions. But if that faith, that same faith that God, they said on page 55, is deep down within you, it's always been there, is placed in something else, then it has a whole different force behind it. If it's placed in something else, and that's what we do here. I mean, we see people. I mean, I was attracted to Mary. I was attracted to Don Coyes. What was looking was what I was looking for. And they held the mirror up. I didn't know that at the time. That was really crucial for me to recognize that what was looking was what I was looking for. Mary says, I'm the fish I got to catch. Yeah. And the I I'm talking about isn't the condition of self. It's the divine spark or the soul it's that great reality. So once you see it in you, you see it in everybody else. Now you might see it in everybody else and it might be really layered and it might be friggin' annoying because it's so layered, but it's there. It's there. We all know that, So that's all I got.
I'll share. My name's Mike. I'm an alcoholic, and thanks for doing this. Next month, I've got a bunch of my friends that have been sober a long time and been doing this work are coming to do the December weekend. Herb K is going to kick it off with the first step. He is my sponsor, and Joe Hawk was my sponsor. And the reason they were is because they ask questions. They don't give me answers. Kurt and I sat on the beach back in 1987 in the summer, and we were wondering, what the hell are we going to do, man? We were going crazy in Alcoholics Anonymous. And within a couple of months, he was working with Joe, and 2 weeks later, I started working with Joe. And I heard Joe talk about my inner suffering and that untreated alcoholism. And the thing that he talked about, not only that, he was able to put his finger on it because I let him, because I was ready to hear it. I went and saw him 2 weeks later after I heard him on a tape, and I think it was very much divine for me. I think it was for a lot of us that were at that time. It grew like crazy. And because he had a way of showing us how to look at ourselves. What Kurt just said, that mirror, instead of using the book as an answer thing, it became a question. Everything was a question to me. And I was able to sift my life, filter my life through the language. They talked, I mean, these guys talked not only about the words, but the language. Don was really amazing because he went so much deeper about the wisdom behind it. And, you know, he said it was a book designed to transmit an experience if you have alcoholism. So do you have it? Yes or no? Not the drink part only, not just going to the meetings, not just being of service and sweeping floors and whatever, but truly having the spiritual awakening. And the one other part of Joe that came through when I first heard him, and I found to be true all along, and he was not perfect by any means. Let me say that to you guys. This guy was, he had his stuff. I love Joe dearly. He was probably one of the best teachers I've ran into in the last 37 years of being sober and doing this journey. But, you know, he loved to pick at the spirit. He loved to see how it would work for you, how it would go. And I hadn't heard people talk like that. Most people in the program were busy telling stories and living out of their, we were even doing this early on in my sobriety, living out of, they get up and do a talk at a convention, speak for 45 minutes or an hour, and they'd spend 95% of it, what it was like, what it was like, what it was like, what it was like. And we look over going, but how did you get 45 years? I'm going crazy in sobriety. I'm uncomfortable. And when I met Joe, I was really uncomfortable. Life was definitely page 52 and more. I started working with him, and the first thing he told me is he said, I can't do anything for you, but I can take you through the book, and if you'll use a dictionary. And he recommended going to a workshop, and he recommended going to the Tuesday night meeting in Santa Monica. And those were the three elements. He said, we can meet once a week. And what it did is he put me in the question. I got around another guy who was not in the program, who was on a spiritual path, and he said, questions open, answers close. Questions open me up. It allowed me to untie, deconstruct what I'd made up. And we talk about the deflation of the ego at depth. And these last 10 years, I've probably gotten more in touch with the suffering of that than ever. And recently, in the last couple of years, I've gotten more into the work of forgiveness and learning what it is and the unforgiveness and the humanness of being an alcoholic. Not just, you know, my life's this way because I'm alcoholic. That's not it. I'm a human being first, and I have a thing called alcoholism that I use to survive. I use to keep myself alive until I can take the bridge across and start to be more authentic and be willing to look within. They used to tell us all the time, Joe and Don, and we would look at them crazy, Bob Olson, they'd say, you've always had the answers to everything you've ever wanted to know. If you'll just get quiet enough and listen, you have the answer. You can fix a car, you can fix a computer, you can fix a relationship. If you'll just get quiet enough, God will speak into you. And one of the amazing things about Don was, and I always tell this little story, is we went to a retreat. He was doing the leading. We were talking at the break, and it was time to go back, and we didn't finish what we were doing. He goes, well, how about if we finish it at lunch? And I said, okay, all right. And so we did. And he said, after the session, he came and said, okay, where are we going? I said, where are we going? He said, well, I don't know. God already has it figured out. We'll just drive in that direction where there's restaurants. And I was like, huh? And I was like 2.5 years sober. I was like, come on, I have to have an answer. And he goes, I'm going to bring these two other lugheads with me. And he brought two guys I'd never met, two guys I never knew. And he did that all the time. And then I said, so we're driving down there. I said, okay, well, where are we going to go? He goes, well, God hasn't shown us yet, so keep going. And then I said, oh, there's no place to park, Don. And so I'm fretting over parking. He goes, oh, don't worry. God's got a spot for us. Just then a guy pulls his car out. Oh, okay. So I pull in. So we go in. We get out of the car. We start to go down the street. And some guy goes, hey, look, there's a sign that says, soup and sandwich for lunch. Don goes, see, there's a sign from God. We go inside the restaurant. What are you going to order, Don? I don't know. The waitress walks over and says, I got two specials, spaghetti and I've got hamburger. Don says, well, you said spaghetti first, so I guess God wants me to have spaghetti. And I just didn't operate that way. He operated out of this let's see what's going to happen. And he would come down from the podium and you'd talk to Don and he'd smile and look at it with his blue eyes and he'd laugh and go, isn't this a great life? And I just never seen anybody be like that over something that seems so trite and simple. But now it seems so important. And that's it. And the last thing I'll say is I went to Henrietta Cyberlink's house this year where Bill met Bob. And I'd never been there before. I've been if you've never been to Akron, Ohio, or I even a couple of years ago went to the Bill Wilson house up in Vermont, and I've been to Stepping Stones in New York. If you haven't been there, it does something to you. It shows you how incredible this is for people that are human beings. But they had a thing, it was a scroll, and the scroll was in the Henrietta Cyberling's hallway when we came in. And the scroll has been given out to millions of people, and it's a scroll on how to listen. And what the Oxford group guys did is they not only sat and meditated, but they also did writing like you guys were talking about. They let the ego mind empty out. Whatever comes to your mind, just empty that out. I've got the scroll here. I don't know how to get it on here for you guys, but if you text me, my number's in there, I'll text it to you. It's about a 14-point scroll that within about a half hour to an hour, you can have this thing. That's what these guys were doing. That's where prayer and meditation came from, was how to listen. They called Ann Smith the mother of AA because she was the one that did the meditation. She's the one who went deep within herself to listen. And so did Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob didn't get sober though until he had the God part, but until Bill gave him the first half of the first step from Dr. Silkworth, which was his experience, then the grounding began. And I really learned something from it. I've been doing this every day since we've been back in June. And this how to listen, visiting with yourself, is the greatest thing you'll ever do, you'll ever give yourself. Because now you know how to be of yourself, give of yourself, and help others to do the same. So we've been given a gift here. These people, I look around AA, most people are suffering in AA because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. They don't. They don't know what they're doing. And I was one of those guys. And I just got a little bit of an inkling now after 30 some years that I'm starting to understand what it means to come into yourself and trust this thing, this spirit, this energy that we all have deep down within us. And this gathering right here, I adore because this is what changed my life. I sat in these things until I could just thaw out this selfishness and self-centeredness, me playing God. Even all these years later, how I play God in resentment, how I lose myself in fear of trying to fix myself. Because the fear is self-reliance. I can't do it. But I'm so baked in with survival and suffering. And I make it all up. And what the program does is allows me to deconstruct it, then reconstruct it. And that's what Joe said. I asked Joe, the one thing I've never forgotten he said to me is, how do you turn your will in your life over to the care of God? He says, you earnestly go after 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Keep leaning in with 10 and 11, and then you must help others in 12. But he said the whole idea is so that God will be able to access you and introduce himself to you. That's very different. So as I wrap up, I want to say that's the end of the story there. That's what it was. So I just wish you guys luck and keep going, and hopefully we'll see you next month. Thanks.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mike. Kurt, you want to go ahead and continue?
Kurt.
You're muted, Kurt.
Oh, sorry about that. Mary, you got anything you want to go?
No, you can go first.
I can go first. All right. I was going to read the promises on working with others. It says practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. Now, don't tell an Al-Anon that. You don't tell Al-Anon this. Because they've been trying to work with alcoholics and they ain't listening. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. What's the message? It says, let me read the message. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. That's the message. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to alcoholics. So this was done to me in 1986 when I didn't have a message to carry. What I did was a guy named Bill Sarton took me to a meeting and he said, "You're going to lead the meeting." And I'm like, "I can't lead the meeting. I'm only sober a day." He said, "Yeah." He said, "You can lead the meeting." And tomorrow he made me lead a meeting. And I said, "I can't do this. I'm only 2 days sober." He said, "Yeah, you're 2 days sober. There's a guy in the room that's 1 day sober." He said, "You relate to him better than anybody else in the room." He said, "I'm 20 years sober and I can't relate to them like you can because you were just there yesterday." Now, did I have a message to carry? No. Did I have a big book message to carry? No. But what it did was, here's what it did. This is what it did for Bill. Bill didn't go and find Dr. Bob because he was altruistic and thought it'd be great to save another alcoholic. Bill came out of a bar in fear of drinking, out of a hotel room, thinking he might drink because he was hearing glasses clatter and ice clatter. And he thought, if I don't find another alcoholic, I'm in trouble. And so it kind of puts the cart before the horse again. He did it to save his own ass. So this is part of my recovery, like Mary said, coming in here. This is part of how I practice these principles and do this. I was asked to do this. Would I prefer not to do this? To be honest with you, I would prefer not to do this. I would prefer to do one-on-one with people. And people that know me know that. But this is what I was asked to do. So I do it willingly and happily, and that's what I do. And I know it's part of my recovery. When I went out at 19 years, I work with people. Here's how I work with people. Greg will get a kick out of this. I would help you sponsor somebody, but I wouldn't sponsor anybody because I was too busy. See, I would help you sponsor somebody. See, it was like I was too busy. I got a family now. I got a business to run. I got kids to raise. But if somebody called me, I would say, "Oh yeah, I'll help you." See, it was all past. Everything was in the past. There wasn't any present thing going on. And this is about, this is about carrying the message. The message is, what it did is it pulled me out when I was a couple days sober. What did it do? It pulled me out of the orbit of this self-centeredness that I didn't know I was suffering from. And it put me into someone else's paradigm where I forgot myself on purpose, just for a moment. Come on. Just for a moment. And I realized that I didn't have any problems. That's what it did. And what that eventually did was it gave me a broader perspective of you're not the only one in the world. It gave me a broader perspective of there's other people here. It gave me another perspective that other people have a voice. But I was so self-obsessed, I was asleep to that. See, so this is like we practice these principles. We've been talking about that. Mary and I have been talking about this the whole time. We've been talking about this in all our affairs. Well, a lot of people say they're forgotten chapters. What are all our affairs? How about the employers, to the wives, to the family afterwards, and a vision for you, more about working with others, right? I mean, this is what all our affairs are about. How can I practice just principles in all my affairs? Most of the people that know me the last 11 years know a different me than they knew 19 years before that. Yep. Right, Kristen? Is that in agreement or no? I mean, there was a different perspective going on, and there was a different viewing platform going on. And the way I explain this, and I do it in metaphor, it's like a football game. And this is the metaphor, this is how alcoholism in my life looks. It was like I was playing this game, this football, and I was on the field and I'd get beat up really bad. And every once in a while they'd take me out on a stretcher and they put me on a bench. And I'd be on the bench for a little bit and I'd say, I can get back in the game. And I'd go back in the game and I'd get beat up again. And I did that a lot of times. And eventually what happened was I got so beat up, I could not go back in the game. This happened 11 years ago. And I realized I'm done. I can't play this game anymore. And so what happened was, rather than sit on the sideline, I went up in the bleachers. And that's the spiritual, starting to integrate this in my life. And when I got up in the bleachers, I realized, oh my God, there's a different view from up here. I could see the game a lot better from up here. I thought, well, if I could see it from here, what if I went up a little further? This is 10, 11, and 12. And the farther I went up in the bleachers, the broader and wider my perspective was on the game. And then it dawned on me, oh, dude, you got to go back down and help people off the field. One of the things I learned from Don Coyce and Bill Bird was, you don't offer help unless it's asked. It's one of the reasons you give elders tobacco. When you give an elder, a traditional man, tobacco, you're allowing them to come into your world. It's an exchange. One of the things he said about prayer and meditation was this. He said, you got this prayer thing all backwards. You can't pray unless you acknowledge what you've been given. If you don't acknowledge what you've been given, then when you pray, you put things out of balance. When you acknowledge what's been given and then you ask, you're keeping harmony. So it's kind of like that changed with thank you for my life today, before I asked for my thinking to be directed. Thank you for my life. Thank you for the people in my life. Thank you for the two-legged. Thanks for the fish that I'm watching. Thanks for you acknowledge. And if you listen to native prayers, that's how they always start. You're the last one that gets to say anything about you. You acknowledge everything else first. So I learned a little about that. I think the book's pretty straightforward. It says this is the 12-step promises. Life will take on new meaning. Yeah, that's a given. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish. That's a profound thing. Loneliness vanish. Mary talked about this. To see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and each other is the bright spot of our lives. Now, I've done this too. I have 12-step people where I was completely asleep to how I was living. I was so busy with everybody else, I couldn't see the wreckage I was leaving behind myself as I was walking through the world. And I thought it was great. I was completely oblivious to the way I was moving through the world. Oh, I'm being of service, I'm helping people, I'm 12-stepping people. And like Mary said, a lot of that had to do with using this as a weapon, you know. And I don't just mean the steps. I mean a better than attitude. I mean, you know, one of the things that really, really was missing, I'll speak for myself, back in the day, was there was a huge, huge lack of humility, conscious awareness, gratitude, and appreciation for what is happening right now. Right now. I was completely, because I was so busy doing things. It was rusty handcuffs or gold handcuffs. They were still handcuffs. And the fruits of my life were not reflecting what my lips were saying. They were not reflect. There was not a sense of peace in these, like Mary read. When you ask for thy will to be done, eventually you'll figure out thy will is being done. You say that enough, you'll figure out thy will is being done. It's happening. That's all. Mary, how about you?
Thanks, Kurt. Yeah. Well, what do I want to say about this? I guess I want to start with working with others is step 12. I think it's a demonstration more than it is words. I realized it's a program of traction, not promotion. And I got caught in the promotion for about 20 years, and hopefully I'm somewhat of attracted to, it's not necessarily just the words that are coming out of my mouth. So I think it's that. And another thing that I found for myself, and and I got it from that James Finley that I love so much, never met, you've had the opportunity of knowing and everything, but I was in a workshop with him and Richard Rohr in Santa Fe, and he said this statement that I'm going to tell you, and I said, oh my God, that's the definition of a sponsor. And he said, we're all candles. We just give light to each other. And when I realized my real sponsor is deep down inside, that's why in the 10th step, when it says that I see that I'm out of neutrality, I go right to my real sponsor, which is that connection with that presence that's present within. And then I go to Missy or Jackie, and they hold a candle for me until I reconnect with that presence that's deep down inside. So, and it takes a lot of the prestige, let's put it that way, out of thinking that we're beyond somebody else and that we're not walking shoulder to shoulder and things like that. Yeah, somebody's done it longer than the other and stuff. I mean, when I talked to your sponsor first, I had no idea. I hadn't met him or anything, but I was going through a real dark night of the soul. And I called up Don Coyos and I just said, I heard you talk on something around the, your stages and your winters, all the seasons and everything, and I didn't know what it was. And he sent me all this stuff and we talked. And if it wasn't for his energy, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I have enormous respect for an elder that is a true elder, such as that man. If you've never met Don, I'm sorry, I got on. I really wanted to hear Kurt, but when he said, Don's joining us, I went, yay, because then I can just kind of sit and my soul gets fed at a level that I need it fed. And so I just know that there's some type of a light that he opens for me. And I think that's what we do for all of ourselves. So when it comes to 12-step work, it's more to me, what am I presenting? What is my demonstration? The reason I talk about that is that I think we help people more by a demonstration than we do by all the words. That came true for me. I will tell you that my daughter is now in this program, or she joined this one. I don't know what she's doing, but anyway, she got sober. Let's just put it that way. Thank God I do Al-Anon. She didn't do it the way I did it, but she's sober and she'll have 14 years this month. And I'm very, very pleased to know that for her. But over the last 14 years, I spoke down and I spoke 2 places where she has been there. And not to my knowing, my host had her be the one to introduce me. And so before I spoke, she went up and introduced me. And then she did it at the Women's International. I didn't know. I thought Brenda was going to do it. And here's my daughter introducing me. And both times she said something that, it was a good day to die, is the way I figured. Because the one thing that I wanted to do is that I want to be the best mom that I can be. I don't have grandchildren. So I still have an opportunity to be the best mom There is. Every day I have that little app that says, be the God, God make me the mother you want me to be, not the one. And so this happened, and she introduced me, and basically she said something, I don't know verbatim, but she said, it's my mother's not the same person she was 40 years ago, whatever. And she went right up. She says, as a matter of fact, she's not the same person she was 2 years ago. And the woman you see here lives by a spiritual program, and it's because of her demonstration of her spirituality that when I needed this program, I knew I could come into it. Now, that's the best 12-step call I did, and I didn't even know she was alcoholic. All I did is that I let God make me and stop trying to preach at her on who she was. I had to realize that I was looking at my daughter as if she was 15 or 18. And right when she came in, she was 45, and she has a hell of a military career that she ended up helping General Mattis run the world there for a while. She's still his personal confidential assistant. I'm so blessed to have a daughter that is that brilliant as that. And I can't say proud, because that would mean I had something to do with it. She's a self-made woman. And I'm eternally grateful. So how do you be a mother to someone who does what she does? I mean, she's 58 now, for God's sakes. How did that, geez. How do you be a mother of a 58-year-old? Well, every day I've been given things. But I am a grandmother to her dog, and so we get along real well. It's very fun that way. So what do I want to point out here is that, first of all, whoever you meet, even somebody that I met, 11 years ago, I didn't know that was going to have the effect on you. All I saw was a soul that needed to be talked to for that moment. And perhaps I shed some light where you could find your real God. And that's wonderful. I'm so grateful because people have done this to me forever. And if I have had that opportunity to do it, it really is an amazing thing. I don't take the credit. I just think that God just arrived. Whatever. For every one of us nuts, there's a wrench. So don't worry. You'll find whatever you need. I think it's true what it says on the bottom of page 89, to be helpful is my only aim. And I think that's true. I don't have to be the help. I just need to be helpful, that maybe you can find something that will work for you. I'm going to tell you what I like most in this chapter, working with others. And it comes on page 98. There's so much meat in this that just a year ago, I found something else that I hadn't done, and I went, I never did this black line. But it was kind of fun because I'm, a seasoned beginner, and I get to see things differently. And God changes these words every time I go through the book, so I see it differently. But one of the things that I've always loved is this part where it says, I want to know where I want to start on this. On page 98, it says, some of us have taken some very hard knocks to learn this truth. And this is what I think is very important, and I understand it deeply because of my experience. Job or no job, husband or no husband, I'm going to change that. I simply do not drink, stop drinking, so long as I place my dependence upon people ahead of my dependence on God. I think that is an enormous thing to continue to tell people. Most of the time when I hear relationship situations, my sponsor used to say to me, you live your life by God first, then you, then the people around you in order of their importance. If I put Candace, my daughter, first, and then God, and then me, it's backwards. It's backwards. It's just totally. But if I put God first and then me, Candace can come in third. Because if I don't have God first in my life, you're going to get a phony, baloney, false persona person talking to you. One of the many multiplicities that's trying to just survive and is scared. You're not going to have the one that's coming from the faith and trust in this presence. So God first, then me, and then the people around me. If I'm dependent on somebody, I'm putting unreasonable demands on that person. It's an awful thing. It's a thing that Dawn would say. It's okay to live your life the way you want to live your life. But if you expect somebody to do what you want so you'll be okay, that's where the selfishness is. That's where I was as a mother. I expected her to respect her mother so I'd be all right, and to do this so I'd be all right. My God, what an awful thing I did for years. Now I can trace that all back when I did inventory for 32 years before I saw it. And I wrote down why she wasn't talking to me or whatever was happening. And I remember as I wrote down what I didn't like about myself, this voice came and said, this has nothing to do with your daughter. It has to do with your abandonment. See, abandonment is my initial wound. We talk about, it's an in thing now to be talking about trauma, for God's sakes. I've been doing that. I've been a trauma therapist and so forth for so long, but now it's an in thing. Well, I know it is. That my trauma came from total abandonment. And the first person that really was always there and said how much she loved me was that little baby. And I held her accountable to be my mother, my father, you name it. And that was wrong. That was wrong. So my dependence was on her. And that has shifted through the years so that I'm able to say to her, I don't need you, but I want you in my life. I just don't need her anymore because I have a higher source that I have. Very important thing for me. So and then, in case you missed that, on the bottom of 99, the top of page 100, it says, remind the people that his recovery is not dependent upon people. It is dependent upon his relationship with God. So it's, this book repeats itself all the time, but it was bam, bam, there you are. And this is the one that I just found that I never did. So if you're new, do this, okay? Because I didn't. Now Candace kind of knows this. I think I said to her, by the way, I don't know if I told you, but anyways, it's here in this program, the last paragraph on page 98, it says, now the domestic problem, which I have a domestic problem. I was not a good parent. Okay. So it says the prospect here has made such reparation as he can to his family. And now listen to this. This is what I've never done. That I was thoroughly explained to my daughter the new principles by which I am living. And that I proceed to put these principles into the action at home. Big line there, folks, isn't it? Big line. I don't know about you. Have you said that to your family? I never said that. Now, she laughs at me. I go, look, I found something new. I should have told you. This is what I'm doing. But so I played with it. The next thing I want to talk about, and then I think I'm kind of through with this because I don't know if I'm through with it, but what I think anyways. It says, now, this is the whole program. And I used to hear people say, these 6 words are our whole program. I thought, wow, it's 6 words? And it's true. I need to trust in God and clean house. That is all our 12 steps. Trust in God and clean house, isn't it? If you keep pondering that, and you'll just see. But again, God first, and then the rest. And, I thought Bev was so brilliant. She said, God first, then you, and then the people around you. Do you know that's what our 5th step says? Admit to God, to yourself, and to other people. Now, that took me almost 40 years to realize that's what she was saying to me. But I realized every time I get out of neutrality, I'm not doing God than me. I've let a person, place, or thing take me away from that. I don't know, Red Road, whatever it is, doesn't make any difference, but it's just for the light. So when I work with people, I think it's more of a demonstration than it is necessarily the words that I'm saying to you. It's probably why I tell so many stories, is that you develop your own story. Pick up one of these things, try it, see what happens, then share it. That's what it's all about. I moved to Maine when I was 5, 6 years sober, and there was no big book up there. I was scared. I mean, I came out of Southern California with Chuck C. and Fast Talking Norm Alpy and Alabams, and you name them, all these people out there that were just brilliant. And I came into an area in Maine where there was no big book. The oldest member, there was one member older than I was, and I had 5 years. And other than that, they were just telling war stories, as was talked about here. And I didn't know what was happening. They were selling the book for profit. They didn't even know the traditions. And I remember calling Bev and saying, Bev, what's happened here? I feel as though I've been put on another planet. And she said, honey, you know how to stay sober. You start a meeting and you share your experience, strength at home. And I watched that community build in there. So what you were saying is nothing better than to watch a thing happen. I watched it come alive. The second Fellowship of the Spirit was in the state of Maine, and I was part of the committee that helped that. It's like you can watch a fellowship grow, and I've had that opportunity to do that. And God will bring whoever you need into your life. And if it's not a person, it's a service. Don't forget there's service here. Don't forget the person that put this thing on this weekend and whatever, don't forget. We used to clean ashtrays and, cups, and I had to wash the dishes at North Hollywood Radford, and I thought, that's terrible. And Hugh said, I used to think it was terrible. And then one day some guy came in and said, hey, next week so-and-so's doing it. He said, what do you mean you're gonna take my cups? These are my cups and stuff. He says, you people tricked me into service, because he learned through service how much love and sharing that we really do, and it's a demonstration. So don't forget that really part of this. Thanks.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks for
Thank
joining
you,
us.
Mary.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Erica and Greg, for doing this.
Oh, thank you so much. If you guys can unmute and thank Kurt and Mary, thank you guys so much for sharing your heart and soul with us today and your experience more than anything.